Charlie, you were chairman in 1999 and have been a pivotal man in the club for many, many years. Just in the build-up to 1999, what sort of shape was the club in prior to that year, coming into 1999?
A good question, Thomas. I think we're always a progressive club, and we would always be looking at, my father used to say years ago, you want a short-term plan, a mid-term plan, a long-term plan. And they all worked at, eventually the short-term was gone, the mid-term became the short-term, and the long-term became the mid-term, and the new long-term. But anyway, my first hearing of Kilglass winning the intermediate championship was in 1985, 2 days after us winning the junior championship. My father and Con Maguire was chairman and vice chairman at the time, and Con being vice chairman said to my father, Parks, you think we do better than Kilmore and be a senior team within 9 years? That's what that was. In '86 we went out, qualified for our group, reached the county semi-final, were well beaten by Castlereagh. It was a good strong Castlereagh team that won the intermediate championship in '99. After that, with a good crop of young players coming through, we reached an under-14 final in '86, and every year they were competitive and getting the semi-finals. And funny enough, their day came in 1992 when they won the under-21 championship on Kilmore, and the team went on to backbone the team the next year in the Tansy Cup, where we went unbeaten in 11 games, reached the final and beat Pearson in the final. And we also reached the northern final of the junior championship, where we lost to Éire Óg by a point. In 1995 we actually competed in the intermediate B after we beaten early in the intermediate championship. So the competition were 13 teams that didn't reach the semi-final intermediate, and we won that competition, beating a very good St. Ronan's team in the final, a Ronan's team that were in the O'Rourke Cup semi-final at the time, and some household names. Another team that helped in the development of our squad would have been your minor team of '97, who I always felt were robbed of both the league and championship, not by anything we done ourselves in Kilglass, but by rules that were made in Roscommon and by bad refereeing decisions. So when we looked at the picture, probably at the end of '98, there was a vacancy for chairman, and I was interested in going for the job, and my big ambition would be winning the intermediate championship. And a few players had come to me, most notably Dermot Washington, and said he had somebody in mind to train the team. What was the story? I said, wait until after the AGM, which was held I think on the 27th of December 1999, and we'll talk to so-called Jimmy Gackman. So that was the build-up, I suppose, to where we were when I took on the chair on the 27th of December. So
okay, and so into '99 then, obviously Jimmy, it was proposed as a manager by Dermot. So just what discussions were had then? You as chairman, obviously you were involved in all that process.
But funny enough, it was discussed at the AGM, I took on the chair, and it was decided that we'd meet Jimmy the following day. So the meeting was called for Regan's in the square in Roscommon, and the delegation that were going was Dermot Washington, Aidan Tully, John Diffley and myself as chairman, secretary and treasurer, and Dermot from the players' point of view. And we went to Roscommon for a 4 o'clock meeting, and I wouldn't have known Jimmy, but you know, you went up to this dude, I was new in the job and I was interested, and this fellow was very good, and there was 3 or 4 people walking around Regan's, and I said, that's hardly him, or this is hardly me. My own mind, we were waiting outside. But eventually he came around the corner, and I can't recall had he a briefcase or a notebook, but he had something. He looked a little bit professional compared to what he was meeting. So the formality went on outside, and we introduced one another, went in, and there was a drink bought, it was all minerals was bought, and Aidan had been working in Roscommon, so Aidan had a dinner as well at his break. So we sat down and the interview began, and funny enough, I always say that we went to interview Jimmy, but the bottom line was Jimmy interviewed us, because he had known a number of players who had been in St. Mel's College. I think 9 he counted that day that would have played on the Mel's panels or come on to Mel's panels, or ex-Mel's players. So he knew he had a foundation, but he needed to know what the rest of the panel was like. I think he would have known Ian, who would have played with Roscommon seniors, and he'd have known Jim Tighe, who had played himself with at Roscommon under 16 level, where my father was also a selector. So we had to brief him then on the other players. I don't want to mention them because we all know who they are, but some very important players weren't on the males contingent, hadn't been on our scouting panels, but had a huge lot to offer to the Kilglass setup. So when our meeting finished anyway, Jimmy said, he says, a lot of injuries, he says, hamstrings myself, a lot of bother. He says, I'll let you know within a week. I'll let you know within a week. So to Christmas time and New Year was coming, I remember in the cruise in on New Year's Eve, and a number of the players said, well, how you get on with your manager? Well, I said, we was talking to him, he's the man I personally would like to get, and he said, let us know early in the new year. So, true to his word, on the 2nd of January, I received a phone call here, and Jimmy said he will be taking the job. The big commitment, he says, he had a decision to make in his own personal life to take on the job, but I think it was a good match that was made in a very short time, and he discussed the fact of starting training, and indoor circuits was the first thing he wanted to do. So at that stage we had to turn to John Gerard for the cash book to buy the weights. We had no weights and nothing like that at the time. We also had to go into Newtown Forbes complex to do the training, so a bit of work involved there, and gradually we got going, and I think the circuit training was quite good, quite enjoyable, but I suppose a few of the players hadn't bought in at this stage, so that needs to be a bit of work done there. And just going on Jimmy's interview last week that he done with you, he said the piece of paper that had Kilglass Gaels the Division Champions 1999, was the date on it was the 5th of February. I recall that. That was one of the nights in Newtown that was discussed. So that's where we started off on then, I suppose, basically.
Okay, and Peter and your own late father Parks became selectors then, so just how did that come about?
Well, funny enough, Peter would have been involved with a lot of the teams in 91, 92, he was manager, and he was selector in 98. And he would also have trained the St Barry's team in the mid-90s, so he was known a lot of our players from being with them and being maybe managing against them. And Peter would also be involved at the underage structure as well. My father did a different kettle of fish. My father got very upset in 1998 at our dinner dance. He went in full of the joys into the dinner dance, and of course there was this award given out to the Hall of Fame, and I suppose nobody deserved it more than my father, but he didn't look at it that way. He thought, this is the P45, my day is done, I have no more to offer Kilglass any more than just support whatever is happening. So he took a huge interest in the fact that this week we were talking to Jimmy Gackman. He would have known Jimmy had been a selector of the county in the 16s, and he knew that there was maybe something happening there. So when Jimmy rang me here on the Sunday actually, and they were doing the job, and we talked for a while, I said, by the way, he says, I want 2 selectors. So my father asked me what happened, and I says, Jimmy's taking the job and he wants 2 selectors. My father straight out said, I'll be one of them. That was the way to get back in. He couldn't be left out, so I suppose he was a wise choice. My father wouldn't have been involved much as a selector with Kilglass over the years. He preferred to stay back. He was chairman for a lot of the years. He wouldn't get involved in selection. So I suppose that's how the pair of boys came about.
Okay, well, no better man. And you then, you were chairman, Charlie, but you were, if I remember correctly, you were very hands-on in terms of being at training and matches, and you were there very much involved.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Jimmy wanted certain things done. I suppose the simple thing he wanted done was the cup of tea and the biscuits, which wasn't the whole pile. But Jimmy seen the merit of having the players sitting down. Tonight, Thomas Tully stepped aside, maybe Thomas Diffley, and he chatted. The next night he stepped aside, maybe Tommy D, and he chatted. So it was intermingling the players with one another, rather than going in, talking in, going home, and not. Yeah. I think it had a huge impact on what was happening. There was also, I suppose, showers we turned on, my sure dressings were clean. You always like to be there, and I suppose 97% of the time I was there.
Okay, and you know, we look back through rose-tinted glasses sometimes, so I know certainly in the league we had a few bad performances, so just what do you remember about maybe the lows before the highs came along?
Well, Jimmy had a say, and he says, when you're up there, he says, you have to go back right down again to come up again. That was what I was saying, I always remember him saying. But yes, we had a couple of bad games, and the one that comes to mind mostly is the St Barry's game. It was on a Saturday evening in Tarranbarry at 6:30, and Jimmy had the troops on the field at 5:30, doing a good warm-up, and I'll never forget one particular Barry's player. He won't mind me saying, if you see this video, Finbar McGowan coming in 6:20, he was in a school under Jimmy, and the bag on the top of his shoulder this way, and the went into a smile on his face. Now, rumour had it, Tommy Dean will clarify this, that there was a wedding the day before, that some of the Kilglass players weren't in the shape they should be. To make a long story short, the Barry's beat Kilglass 112 to 19, and Finbar scored 1-9 over the 112 for Barry's. But, through the Jimmy's forum, he pulled all the lads together, and I suppose people weren't that happy, and he says, you're winners or quitters. He said, if you're winners, you'll be on the field at Kilglass on Tuesday night. If you're quitters, I don't want to see you. So every member of the panel turned up on the Tuesday evening. And history will show that Kilglass didn't lose another game from that Saturday evening, or we won the county final in Ballinameen 4 or 5 months later. We beat all our league games. We actually beat a very good Kilbride team in a challenge game in Kilglass on the August bank holiday, and we won our championship games. So I suppose that was the turning point for the whole year.
Absolutely. And what was it about that group, you know, that just sort of clicked? And as you say, you had to have the low before you have the high, but you know, was there anything in particular that sort of gelled them together, do you think?
Well, I think that the fact I mentioned at the start there was we used to have 3 players left from 85, with Jim Tighe, Vinnie Murphy and Tommy Deehan. We got 5 of the starting team came from the 92 under 21 winning title, and 5 more came from the minor team in 97 that you were on yourself. That was the backbone. It just proves that you need. We probably weren't strong enough before we got the 5 players from the minor team. We always there thereabouts, getting the semi-finals, getting the winning the B championship. That we just weren't able to get over the line in intermediate. I think the panel was bigger, and there was great camaraderie, a lot of friends, a lot of, you know, after a game it was great fun. Great, you know, everyone seemed to enjoy themselves. So I think it takes all that to put a team together.
And was there anything about Jimmy's tactics as a manager, along with his 2 selectors obviously, that was new to you, or that you thought, this is interesting?
Well, basically it was a simple game that time, it wasn't like now. But Jimmy had one policy, that if you were playing number 2, you kicked the ball down the line and went to number 10. You didn't try to kick it across the field to number 7. And that was simple, but it was very effective. So the lads knew if number 2 had it, it was more or less heading for the number 10 corner, the side there. You know, played a very direct type of football. He also had a great way of getting our lads mentally focused. Jimmy had to say the PMA, positive mental attitude. You know, that always stood with me since. But there was huge merit in that. I never forget, even before we had foils in the championship. So good evening, he had the whole panel players sitting around him in the pitch above doing a training session. I was getting the tea in the kitchen, watching what was happening, and he says, we had lost to Foyles, in fairness, the year before with 10 points. Foyles were probably the strongest team in the championship. And he said, you're engrossed. He says, lads, you're going to beat St. Foyles tomorrow evening. I have no doubt you're going to beat St. Foyles tomorrow evening. You beat my team, St. Bridget's, no, you're playing now at the moment. And that went into my head, and I wasn't involved at all. It had to get into your heads. And I went down to Roosty that night. I had 5 pints against Tommy Cox's, and went out the door. Tommy was down at the door, and I says, Tommy, we're going to beat Foyles tomorrow evening. And he said to me, you're joking. That is a fact. So that was where Jimmy had to get into people's heads. He got into my head, to win that game.
Absolutely. And look, thankfully we did go and beat Foyles, and then into a semi-final against Dominic's. So what do you remember about the semi-final and then leading into the final? Yeah,
well, I suppose we could mention the Joseph game first. To be fair, Joseph were quite a good team, and they gave us lots of trouble in both league and championship at the time, and they beat us in the league final. But that game to me was a huge game for Tara and Barry. And my big recollection is, there's 2 things I recall in that game. Is firstly, we were warming up in Kilglass. Jimmy always warmed up at a different pitch. He didn't go to the pitch we were playing in. And again, I was making a cup of tea for the lads before they went, and they were on the field. And this guy came in the door in a big jeep, and he had a big fold-up bed. I said, who's this, or where's he going to? And he says, where's the Joseph's team, he says. I said, they're not here, I says. It's above in Tara Barry. He got confused, whatever happened, the big mix-up they had. So the Joseph's physio came to the Kilglass pitch. Whatever happened there. And the second thing I remember that day is, Tommy Washington had a fantastic game, but his belly or his stomach was black and blue after the game. He showed me himself to walk on him. And Tommy, we all know, was a huge talent. That was that game. The Downey's game, I suppose, we had 2 tough games against Joseph and Foyles. I think we were a bit confident into the Downey's game. And it was a dour struggle. Of course, Downey's we always a physically strong team anyway. And it took a few things. I think yourself had quite a good game that day, gave you nice points. Tommy Dean had an outstanding game, and I think a guy landed off the bench, Adrian Hannon, that would have been influenced the last minutes of that game. But when that game was over, I think in all my years with Kilglass, I never seen what happened after that. As the team went back towards the dressing room, the supporters got behind them and the applause still lit up. I'll never forget that applause we got.
Yeah.
The air of satisfaction that was in the club.
Yeah. It makes you emotional even now.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got through that day, thankfully, and it was a great occasion. So then we're building up to a final. So it's new territory. It's dangerous territory because it's easy for lads to get distracted. So just talk me about the build up to that that you remember.
Well, there's a huge air of excitement in the parish, and I suppose, in fairness to the management team, and Jimmy and my father and Peter, to get the team very much grounded, I thought, at all times. A lot of stuff that happened was left to myself and Aidan and John Gerard and to all the people in the club. Like, there was an awful lot of colour put up in the club at the time. Poles were covered, there were people up on poles there, and there was people reporting there was going to be robbed in houses and different things. But the team itself was kept away from that. I think that was down to good management skills as well. And the meetings Jimmy had, we all recall the meetings we used to have in the old school. I used to enjoy them too, because I think there again Jimmy could get into the fellas' heads what he needed to do. He asked questions, what are you going to do tomorrow if this goes wrong? And the lads, he put into their heads that if it did go wrong, that, you know, there was a way out of it. And I suppose the right build up to the final was the Saturday beforehand was a real wet day, and we knew the forecast coming for a wet day again on Sunday, so we had to prepare for that as well. But I think when the final came around, Kilglass were just ready for it. I know, as you said, we were nervous and probably a new venture for us and all that, but still we were there, and I think we were going to be hard beaten.
Okay, and what do you remember about the game itself then, how it played out?
Well, the game itself, I suppose, there was total dominance by Michael in the first. It was half the game, and then an awful lot of wide went into a strong breeze, and I think the electric kick from out the field, I remember a lot of the balls happened wide, which shouldn't have happened because you should your corner forward, you shouldn't be down that. But we got the scores at the right time. We got 1, 2 to 4 points at half time, and you'd be kind of confident enough at half time that it was there to be won, that we hadn't really played well, and we started the second half very good. Then of course Miles got on top again, and you'd be a bit worried. But I suppose with 11 minutes to go, as the Scotland Herald said, come with the hour, come with the man. Jim Tyre right, and the rest is history. Banking 2-2, and a story that always reckons with me too was about last week's game. Michael had a free out the field, and I presume Raymond and Sean were on the line for a start, but Tommy Deehan and Pádraig Newton had to be there as well. And Pádraig said to Tommy before the game was over, he says, "Now Deehan," he says, "didn't I tell you we'd win a county medal before you retire?" That was the end of that day.
No man more deserving.
No man more deserving, no.
Absolutely. And then we finish up with the journey back to Ruski. There was not just.
Well, there's a couple of people I'd like to mention before we go on further. I think you could never forget the role Seamus Nugent played that year in travelling the length and breadth of this country to get players. On one occasion, I think it wasn't that year, but the following year, Jimmy wanted Sean Davis up to the month of December for a training session before the league final. Now, he asked for Sean Davis. Gerard had been in Galway at the time, and Gerard was close enough to the team, but to the Thursday night, I think Jimmy just wanted this player to Sean to kick out, and Seamus decided to go to Galway for Gerard, down to Limerick for Sean, back to Kilglass, back to Galway, back to Limerick. Sean told me after, he was going to take to a chip shop at 1:15 in Limerick. So that was fair, that's only one evening's work. Yeah. That was Seamus Nugent the whole time. Yeah. He preferred to go anywhere or do anything. I think we shouldn't forget, I suppose Tommy Cox was our sponsor at the time. I went to Tommy on a number of occasions over the years, and he never refused. He went off a question before, he always come up with the goods in them times, which was very thankful for too. And I also like to thank all our supporters and the club officials at the time. I think John Jordan and Tully were great in their roles as Gistor and Rooney. They were quite good, easy to work with. So we'll go on to the celebrations now, and again I ended up travelling back as I did in '92 from the match with my father, and there probably nobody more happier than him heading back to Kilglass, because I suppose he was big into forming Kilglass Gaels, and people said maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, but he always thought he was right, and now he had a senior club, so he was happy. And we got back to Rooski, of course, in the night, and it was a meal at the Cruise Inn, and we looked into the usual round at all the pubs, and we hadn't time to go to Antiqui, of course, for some reason. So I always wondered that my father and Jimmy deciding to go to Antiqui on Monday evening at 7 o'clock. That was kind of a tricky one. I knew myself, because some of us were in Coxall at 10:30 on Monday morning, so we weren't the ideal candidate for going to Antiqui. But anyway, it was done anyway, and that would be it. Another thing happened there at that time too was, of course, Brian Keenan had a bookie in Roscommon, and Kilglass was generous odds of 40-1. Of course, Dermot had a big like in a flutter, spotted this, and he decided to have a bet. It was Tommy did too, young Tommy, and then Tommy Cox and Peter Diffie got in the act, and a few more of them. So of course Wednesday was the day for going to collect the money in Brian Keenan, so a few thousand got up there, I think, and there was a celebration in Lanesborough, I think, coming home.
Nice for it to pay off in more ways than one. Okay, and you know, thinking back 25 years now, which is hard to believe, but yeah, and there have been good days and bad days since then, you know, and you've been involved with all sorts of football, Charlie, over the years. Where does that rank in your sporting memories?
Well, in my memory, to be the highest point in the story, because it's a great achievement to win an intermediate championship at the time. There were 17 teams took part in that competition, so it was a good, you know, and some quite good teams in it. Like the last one were 14-1, they weren't favourites, so we had a lot of work to do. But I think everyone pulled together, and from players to team to management and even our supporters, we all got it right, and I'll never forget it.
Thanks, Charlie.